Hey, welcome back. My name is Erica Gilliam and I am the artist here at the Sleepy Pine Studio. And for today's coffee talk, I thought we would talk all about using watercolor in your bullet journal, art journal, grimoire, planner, wherever you have felt inspired to use it. I want to talk a little bit about that. Most of this is going to be about bullet journal, but these tips can apply to pretty much everything. Before I get started though, I do want to let you know that I have a whole bunch of new products added to my shop this weekend. I'm super obsessed with this aesthetic. It's amazing. I love how these turned out. I'm not gonna lie, it was a pretty emotional week getting to the point of creating them. I've shared in my last couple coffee talks about the struggles, the mental struggles, and the blocks, and so this week was pretty rough, but I'm really proud of myself because I pushed through those blocks and I got to the other side and created this amazing product that I'm really proud of. So I'm super excited for you guys to check them out. I will leave a link down below for that as well. So, welcome to Coffee Talk. So I thought we would just jump right in. I have my bullet journal here. I'm going to use it as reference as I'm talking. And I also have all of my notes actually written on paper this time instead of my computer. I tend to be more of a paper person. For me, if I write something down by hand, I retain the information better and I like the feel of paper. I've tried using digital planners, and while they have their place, I just never go back to them. I don't check them. So I prefer a physical medium like this. So I did write my notes inside of my bullet journal, and I will be referring back to this periodically throughout this whole thing. Also, if you are new, welcome to Coffee Talks. I want to warn you, I'm a little bit rambly, but I'm going to try to be as thorough as physically possible while I talk about all of this and share all the things that I've learned. So this might be kind of a long video. That's just how it is around here. But grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's talk watercolor and journals, because this is freaking fun. I started doing this in January of this year, and I'm obsessed. It's really funny because I had ideas for using watercolor in my journal before, but I hadn't just gone for it. Like, I always either talked myself out of it, or I had dabbled, but I never finished anything. I had the idea to use watercolor in my journals. I've even tested and swatched watercolor in journals before, but I never really jumped in and went for it until the beginning of this year. And I will link that video here. It's the first bullet journal spread that I did. If you want to watch the entire thing, I will be showing clips throughout this whole video of a lot of the different spreads that I've done so that you can kind of see some of the things I'm talking about in action, I suppose. I feel like the best place to start is talking about the journals themselves. Some of the brands that I have tried and that I've used, as well as what to look for when you want to do this in your own journal. The journal that I use all the time, this is my go-to journal, is the Leuchtturm 1917. I've been using it for years. I absolutely love this journal. Another one that I know works really well is Moleskine. They have very similar paper. I actually did a blog post several years ago, actually, but I deep dive compared a Leuchtturm and a Moleskine journal. I talked about the difference in page numbers and the weight of the pages and the layout and all of that. So if you're interested in that, I will leave a link down below to that blog post so you can see kind of the difference between a Leuchtturm 1917 and a Moleskine journal. Another journal that I haven't tried yet, but I've seen and it's on my list of ones to try, it's just a little bit more on the pricey side, is the Archer and Olive, I believe is the name. These journals are made with thicker paper so they can hold up a little bit better to using mixed media on the paper themselves. So they have less pages overall inside of them, but they're thicker paper. If you're using watercolor in your planner, like a physical planner or, a happy planner, an Erin Condren, something like that, which you absolutely could do this stuff in that too, I would test the paper. I think it would be fine. I have a happy planner and my paper seems thick enough to be able to do this, so I think it would be fine. I'm hoping to be able to do a video in the nearish future where I actually compare a bunch of different kinds of journals and planners. So if I do that, then I will test a bunch of the paper as well. But we'll see, because I have to, buy all of those planners to compare them. So anyways, most of what I'm going to share in this video will be based on my experience using a Leuchtturm, but can be applied to other journals and planners as well. One question that I got a lot in regards to the journals is, how do I keep my paper from tearing? The truth is, I don't do anything special to keep my paper from tearing. I've had no trouble at all using the Leuchtturm, and I will do several layers, heavy layers of paint, and I really don't have any issues at all. I've never had paper tear, or it doesn't go through. Sometimes the moisture of the wet page, if I am really heavy-handed with the water, it will kind of moisten the pages. The pages around it will become a little bit wet as well. As a whole, the paint isn't going through to the next page. I don't have any issues with bleeding or anything like that. One thing is, if I have really dark colors, or if I have like a full page painted, and then if I turn the page and I write on the other side, the paper, sometimes I will end up with like marks from the paint where it like rubbed off onto the other page. If that is happening, then I'll just toss a piece of paper in there, like an extra paper or two, like a piece of cardstock. I might throw it in there and then write what I need and then pull it out. Or I just accept it. I do not have issues with tearing. I do know that there are journals that do have issues with tearing though, and this is why you want to test paints on your journal. You could test it like at the very back of the journal just to see how the paper handles it. I would do like 1 wash, 2 washes, go over the area a couple times, seeing like, don't push hard, but do a layer, let it dry. Do another layer, let it dry. See kind of what your journal, if you're using something other than a Leuchtturm or a Moleskine or one of those with thicker paper, I would test that paper. If you have issues, you cannot paint in your journal, but you want paintings in your journal, we will talk about that at the end, where there are some other alternatives that you can do to be able to get watercolor painted things inside of your journal. The next thing is the types of paint that I use. Most of my paint is Grumbacher Academy. It's a paint I started with. I buy it in the tube, and I've made my own palette. I also have some Winsor & Newton paints, as well as some Koh-i-Noor paints. So the other paint that I get questions about literally all the time is what gold paint I use. My gold paint is Coliro Colors Gold and Silver Fine Tech palette. I love their metallic paints. They're stunning. I've been using this palette for 3 years and I love it so much. I am so happy with it, and the colors are really opaque. I find that if I put some water on it and then let it sit for a little bit to let that water kind of activate the paint, that helps a lot. I can't just swipe it. It needs some time to activate. And then if it's too watery, you have to find the right balance, because if it's too watery, it'll be really thin. If it's not watery enough, it won't spread. So you got to find like this middle ground but when you can get it right, it's stunning. That's the gold paint that I use, though I know that there are other brands that you could also try. All of them have worked great. I've never had one paint work better than another. It doesn't really matter as far as whether or not the paints work in the journal. One thing I do run into though is if I use a really dark color like an indigo, which I paint with a lot of indigo, over time it will rub off on the page opposite it. This probably could be helped using some kind of fixative. I don't know because I've not even looked into anything like that. I just accept it as a part of it. Another thing you could do is slide in pieces of like parchment paper or tracing paper or something like that in between those pages if you want to completely avoid it, and then just pull it out whenever you look at it and then put it back in. But I just accept it. And I guess that brings me to the things that I've learned while using watercolor in my journal. And the first one is it's not perfect. I think that's one of the things I like about it, because for me, doing watercolor paintings, like a formal painting, I'm always thinking about the way I paint it, getting my lines perfect, everything, looking exactly the way I want it to. And in my journals, I'm a lot more free and flexible. It doesn't have to be so perfect. It can be the concept or the ideas. It's a great place to try some new things or just play around with the washes of color, or really creating something unique and magical without having the pressure that it has to be perfect. It's a great place for me to kind of, be free. But it also requires a lot of patience because you're gonna mess up. You're going to mess up. In my first video that I did, I talked about how I did this page and I started with one thing and I was doing lines and I had this whole idea and it did not work out. I ended up completely covering the entire thing with indigo and then using gold to decorate. It turned out beautifully, but it was just a part of the process. Sometimes I have pages that I either don't like. I have sections I might finish painting and then I'll cover it with a sticker or something like that. So you got to be really patient with the process. Another thing that I have learned while using watercolor in my journals is that the pages will warp. There is nothing you can do about the pages warping if you're painting directly in your journal. It's just going to happen. At first, I thought it was going to bother me, so I was so intentional to try to flatten my pages after. So what I would do is when I would finish working on my journal, I would close the journal and put a whole bunch of heavy books on top of it. And that does help. But I stopped doing that a long time ago. I just don't see it as necessary. The pages, it definitely changes the shape of the journal because the paper now because it's all warped, it takes up more space, I suppose. It's funny because the warped part of it is my favorite part. I love that my pages are warped. I think it's because it feels like it has life, like it's lived a life. I love that feeling, that crinkly sound when you turn the pages. I love that. It brings me so much joy. I guess it just adds to the fact that it's not perfect. And that's one of the things that I like about it. I might mess up and I just kind of go along with it. Or I skip that page and do it over again. If I'm really particular, I'll cover up a page. I've only done that once or twice. I will say sometimes I will spend so long painting a spread. I will decorate and paint my planning spread and then I just don't end up using it, but that's just me. I don't know. Another thing that I really have to think about is the composition that I am doing. When I am painting, I have a few different kinds of pages I will paint. So the first would be a full page image where I've done an apothecary cabinet. My most recent one is a meditation spread, and I love these full page art pieces as a way to break up my journal. They add inspiration. I love to turn the page and it's there, it's stunning. I also will do informative pages like my moon phases or my menstrual phases page. I've also done a page on Samhain And I like to use my journal not just for practical things, but also for inspirational pieces. So I might create an inspirational page or an informational page, depending on how I'm feeling at the time. What's inspiring me, I like to be able to put that in there. Also, when I'm learning new things, I will make these research pages where I tell a little bit about what I'm learning so that I can refer back to it. And it makes it a lot more of an interactive experience. If you have a planner, like an Erin Condren or a recollections planner or something that it's bound and you can't add pages to it, like a happy planner, you could add more pages, but a bound planner, that would be really difficult. Maybe you won't be able to add these inspirational or whatever sections, but you could add some really cool washes. So for instance, if you wanted a watercolor feel one week, you could just do a wash of color. I do this all the time where I will just add some watercolor washes and make it look like a galaxy or some colors that go well with a sticker set I want to use. I did a spread with coffee. And I've done a couple different versions because I have some coffee stickers in my shop. I did one that was like coffee colors, and it was just a wash of color and then some of my coffee stickers. I also did another one that was like galaxy and some of my coffee stickers, which was really fun too. So I've kind of played around with that, and doing washes is a great way to add that watercolor feel without having to put anything detailed in it. So it could just be something that you write over. If you had a regular planner or a page in your bullet journal or whatever that you wanted to just do a wash, a very light purple over most of the page, and then you literally write on top of it, that's totally doable. That's one of the things that's really cool about it, because if you water down your paints a lot, you can do these really like thin washes. Another way that I've used watercolor is to create headers, or I'll put like boxes or do a quick little watercolor wash that I can then write on afterwards. Those are another really fun way to kind of differentiate, or, if in my bullet journal, I'll do like the days of the week. If you have a planner, you could like a happy planner, you could do something like that over the already created separations, stuff like that. There's really creative ways to use watercolor in your planner. Some things to think about are leaving room for text. So if you do want to do a whole page, just embrace it and take up the whole page. If you are wanting it to be a practical, useful page where you're planning your day or putting information or putting a quote or whatever, you want to make sure that you leave room in your composition for the text that you're wanting to add. Sometimes I will just put something in the corner and then I just move what I'm writing over, or I might, just along the top or the bottom. So I'm thinking about where I want to write and how much I want to be able to go onto that page. Working in your journals is also a good place to try new things. So for instance, if you're like, ooh, I really want to practice some new lettering styles, that's a really good place to practice it. Do the days of the week, or put some notes, put a little quote, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And the cool thing is that it's yours. So it just makes it feel that much more personal. That's one of the things I love about it, because I feel like I am invested in this journal, like it's a part of me. That's one of the things I really, really love about it. Another thing is you could cut the pages. This is kind of crazy. I tried this for the first time in June, I think. And I created a Dutch door using my paper, and I actually cut the paper so you can, like, it peeks onto the page on the other side, and then you can turn it over, and I used both sides of this Dutch door that I created, and I love this. I've done it a few times since then too, because it's a really fun way to kind of change up your journal spread as a whole. So as you're working in watercolor in your journal, think about what your purpose is. If it's just for decoration, just make sure you're thinking about what else is going on there. If you want to create an entire page, just embrace that. If you have a physical planner and you have 1 week that you literally just didn't use it, I don't know if anybody else is like that, but I've had times where I just don't use my planner 1 week. Cover the page with paper and paint on that paper, or just paint over it. Play around with it. Use it as an opportunity to try something. Test on those pages. So if you're like, ooh, I really want to do a moon in a couple weeks. So use a week that you haven't, you didn't really use your planner, and test it out. Play around with it. Figure out where you might want that shape to be later. And then the other thing to think about is aesthetics. If you are using a specific color palette for that month or that week or whatever, use it over the course of several pages so they all feel like they're cohesive and together, and you can create this aesthetic based on the color palette that you've chosen. So as far as using watercolor in your journal, like inside of it, I think that's pretty much all that I have. My biggest thing is don't be afraid to be messy. Splatter paint, and if it gets on the other page, it's on the other page. It's not that big of a deal. Recognize that there might be places that your lines aren't perfectly straight, and it just doesn't matter. It's more about how it feels and looks and feels than how perfect it is. If you have a journal that you cannot paint in, pages are too thin, or the paper is falling apart when you paint on it, or it has holes in it and it's tearing or whatever, or if you don't want the wrinkly bits from the pages warping when you're painting on them, another option is you can paint outside of your journal and adhere it in. For instance, you could paint on watercolor paper and then glue it in. You could paint on regular paper and then photograph it and print it and put it in here. I've seen people do digital art and print them and then glue them into their journal or tape it in. If you glue could even wrinkle your pages a bit, but if you wanted to tape it and just use double-sided tape around the edges, that would work. You could paint on separate piece of paper and then cut out the shape. So if you wanted to paint a moon, you could paint the moon, and then when you come up with one that you really like, cut it out and adhere it in. That's another option. If you want watercolor elements in your journal, but you don't like the way that you paint, or you aren't feeling confident in that, and you want that without the work, I guess, without the time, I sell watercolor stickers that basically are either painted in my journal themselves and then digitized and turned into a sticker so you can add it to your own journal, or they are painted externally but made specifically for journals. So sometimes I will paint them on other paper, but then I turn them into a sticker. And stickers are a really good way, whether they're my stickers, which I'm, shamelessly plugging here, of course, because this is my channel. Whether they're my stickers or stickers someone else makes, those are another really good way to add that feel. There are tons of stickers that are watercolor based to add the watercolor feel. My stickers specifically are made so you can write over them, and they're waterproof, so if you spill on your journal, the sticker doesn't get ruined. And that's another fun way. And it's funny because I love using my own stickers. What I will do a lot of times is actually do a combination. So when I don't have a ton of time, what I will do is I will do a quick watercolor wash. Just add some color onto the page, and once it's dry, I'll just fill it in with stickers, and it makes it feel like this magical spread, and all I did was a little bit of a watercolor wash and throw some stickers on it, and all of a sudden it feels so much more exciting, I guess. So that's another option where you can just throw on that watercolor and then top it with other things. You don't need to paint complex or complicated things in order to use the watercolor in there. I have I've painted everything from really, really detailed things like my apothecary cabinet to not detailed stuff. It doesn't make a difference. Both feel just as magical. So just do whatever you're comfortable within the journal. And while I'm on the subject of my own stickers, I do want to tell you a little bit about some of the new stickers that I have and some of the stickers in general that are available in my shop. If you are looking for stickers that will help create the watercolor feel within your journal, in my shop I have everything ranging from calligraphy, washes, and label stickers that you can use, full page stickers that are art prints, and miscellaneous sticker sets that also would go really well in a journal or grimoire or whatever it is. So if that's something you're interested in, I will leave the link down below to my shop so you can check out some of the stickers that are available there. I think that's all. If you have any questions about using watercolor in your journal or something that I might have missed, or just want to share your experience of decorating your own journal, I would love to hear them, and I will be in the comments responding as well. So definitely leave those down there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me for today's Coffee Talk, and I will see you guys again next week. Bye.